has declared an unofficial war on Africa. Time to show consequences. In the days leading up to the televised showdown, Trump had been ramping up his preparations with his team, confident that it would be an easy victory over a young, inexperienced African. In the Oval Office, he was reviewing his attack points with aides. "I want to expose all his weaknesses," Trump said, studying briefings on Burkina Faso. "Terrorism, poverty, military coup. I will systematically destroy him." Stephen Miller, the architect of Trump's anti-immigration policies, suggested a more sinister approach. "Mr. President, why don't you question his legitimacy as a leader? Suggest that Africa doesn't produce real leaders." Trump laughed cruelly. "Perfect. I will show that these African countries are irrelevant on the world stage, that America determines who is a legitimate leader and who is not." Meanwhile, in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim was coordinating a very different preparation with his intelligence team. "Major Sawadogo, are all the files on intercepted communications ready?" he asked. "Yes, sir. We have recordings of 47 conversations where Trump uses extremely offensive language about African leaders," the intelligence chief replied, "including a December call where he called all African presidents monkeys in suits." Ibrahim studied the transcripts with a grave expression. "Or what about the evidence of destabilization operations?" "Fully documented, President. Trump personally approved $340 million to overthrow African governments that do not cooperate with American interests." Dr. Ouedraogo still hesitated. "President, exposing this will cause a geopolitical earthquake. Trump has been underestimating Africa for a long time," Ibrahim said determinedly. "Time to teach him what consequences there are." On Fox News, Sean Hannity was preparing to moderate what he hoped would be President Trump's epic takedown of an African dictator. "This is going to be fantastic television," he told producers. None of them imagined they would witness one of the greatest political humiliations in American history. The evening of May 29th, 2025, arrived with an anticipation that neither side had adequately anticipated. In the Fox News studios, Trump adjusted his tie with characteristic confidence, convinced that it would be a triumphant evening. On the other side of the world, Ibrahim Traoré sat serenely in his office, a briefcase of explosive documents at his side. "Good evening, America," began Sean Hannity. "Tonight we have a historic showdown between President Trump and President Ibrahim Traoré over the future of America-Africa relations." The screen split to show Trump in the plush, Fox Studio, and Ibrahim in a simple but dignified presidential setting. "President Trump," Hannity began, "many Americans want to know, how do you intend to deal with the growing challenges from African leaders who are questioning American authority?" Trump leaned forward aggressively. "Sean, it's simple. America first means we don't tolerate disrespect from anyone, especially from countries that depend on our aid." "Ibrahim," Trump said, turning to the camera with a cruel smile, "you need to understand that America determines the world order. Countries like yours exist because we allow them to." Ibrahim remained calmly seated. "Interesting perspective, Mr. President, but perhaps we should discuss what you really think about African leaders when you think no one is listening." "What are you talking about?" Trump asked, the first hint of discomfort crossing his face. "I'm talking about the call you made last December to the President of France," Ibrahim said calmly, "where you referred to African presidents as monkeys in suits who need to be disciplined." The studio went completely silent. Trump paled visibly. That's a lie." "Really?" Ibrahim asked, smiling for the first time. "Hannity, would your producers like to play the recording I have here?" The panic in Trump's eyes was palpable. He knew exactly what conversation Ibrahim was having. Sean Hannity was visibly panicked, realizing that the situation had gotten completely out of hand. "President Traoré, these are very serious allegations." "They are not allegations," Ibrahim interrupted calmly. "These are documented facts. Would you like to play the recording now, or would President Trump prefer to explain first?" Trump was now visibly sweating, gesturing wildly. "Ibrahim, you don't understand the context." "I understand perfectly," Ibrahim said, activating the audio player. "This is the conversation of December 15th, 2024, 2:23 p.m. between President Trump and President Macron." Trump's unmistakable voice echoed through the studios. "Emmanuel, these Africans are getting very arrogant. Especially this kid from Burkina Faso. They are all monkeys in suits who think they are important. We need to show them who is boss." Dead silence fell across the studio. Trump tried to deny it. This was taken out of context." "Context?" Ibrahim asked. "What context justifies racist language about democratically elected leaders?" In the recording, Trump continued, "All of Africa should be recolonized. These countries are zoos run by animals." Hannity tried to cut the feed, but Ibrahim continued, "But there's more. This is a call with President Putin where you discuss the final solution to the African problem." "No!" Trump shouted, rising from his chair. "Turn it off!" But it was too late. Trump's voice echoed again. "Vladimir, we need to work together to keep these Africans in their place. Maybe some coordinated operations." "Fake news!" Trump yelled, now completely out of control. "Deep fakes, manipulation." Ibrahim remained calmly seated. "Mr. President, these recordings have been verified by 3 independent agencies, including the FBI, which confirmed their authenticity. You have just proven to the world that your Africa policy is based on pure racial hatred," Ibrahim said. "Not on legitimate American interests, but on white supremacy disguised as geopolitics." Trump was now visibly having a panic attack on the air. Trump was now in a complete meltdown, his hands shaking as he desperately tried to deny evidence of his own racial hatred. "This is a coup!" he shouted, pointing at the camera. "Intelligence operation to destroy America." Sean Hannity tried to save the day. "Let's go to commercial break." "There will be no break," Ibrahim said firmly. "The world needs to hear everything." He activated another devastating recording. "This is a conversation with your generals about Operation African Cleansing, a plan to assassinate African leaders you consider problematic." Trump's voice was clear. "I need Ibrahim Traoré gone, permanently. Make it look like an accident." Trump was now hyperventilating. "Lies, all lies." "Mr. President," Ibrahim said calmly, "your own generals recorded these meetings because they were horrified by your orders. 3 of them have already turned over evidence to Congress." "Treason!" Trump screamed. "Deep state! Conspiracy!" Ibrahim flashed documents on the screen. "These are orders signed by you authorizing $500 million to neutralize African destabilizing elements. Your own signature." "And this," Ibrahim continued inexorably, "is a list of 23 African leaders targeted for elimination. My name is at the top." Trump slumped back in his chair, clearly having some kind of mental episode. "No, this can't be real." "It's very real," Ibrahim said, "just like your words about African racial inferiority in a cabinet meeting." Another recording. "These Africans are genetically inferior. Darwin was right about racial hierarchy. America needs to keep them in check." Hannity was now desperately trying to end the show, but the producers knew this was historic television. "President Trump," Ibrahim said, "you have just been exposed as a white supremacist who uses presidential power to promote genocide. How do you explain this to the American people?" Trump was now mumbling incoherently, clearly in complete psychological breakdown. No one was supposed to know. Secret plans." In his state of total panic, Trump began to unintentionally confess, confirming the authenticity of everything Ibrahim had revealed. "You don't understand the pressures I face," he shouted, tears streaming down his face. "America is losing control. These Africans are becoming too powerful." Ibrahim watched calmly as Trump self-destructed on live TV. "So you're confirming that you planned assassinations of African leaders?" "I had to protect America," Trump yelled. "You're taking our markets, partnerships with China and Russia. It was an existential threat." Sean Hannity was now in full panic, realizing that he had just moderated a confession of war crimes on live TV. "President, maybe you should stop talking." "No!" Trump shouted. "I need to explain. Ibrahim ruined everything, decades-long plans destroyed by an African boy." "What plans?" Ibrahim asked, knowing that Trump was now confessing everything. "Operation Free Africa," Trump said, completely out of control. "Remove all independent African leaders. Recolonize the continent through puppets. It was the only way to keep America great." "And how did you plan to do that?" "Assassinations, coups, civil war, anything necessary." Trump was now confessing to planned genocide on national television. "Africa should serve America, not compete with us." Ibrahim remained impassive. "Mr. President, you just confessed to planned genocide against the African people on world television." It was necessary," Trump mumbled, finally realizing the magnitude of what he had said. "America first, whatever the cost." Hannity finally managed to cut the broadcast, but it was too late. Trump had confessed to crimes against humanity live in front of 200 million viewers. "Mr. President," Ibrahim said in his final words before the cut, "you have just shown the world the true face of American white supremacism. Thank you for confirming everything we have always suspected." The broadcast ended with Trump sobbing uncontrollably. In the hours following the devastating broadcast, shockwaves rippled not only across the United States but around the world. Clips of Trump's confession went viral, being translated into dozens of languages. "Trump confesses to planning African genocide," screamed global headlines.
The tense confrontation, President Trump ambushing the president of South Africa. The president of South Africa there to talk trade and to try to reset relations between the U.S. and South Africa. President Trump at one point calling for the lights to be dimmed and playing a video, and then showing a stack of papers that he said were articles proving a white genocide. The president of South Africa denying the unsubstantiated claims, at one point saying to President Trump, "I'm sorry, I don't have a plane to give you." Here's Mary Bruce.
Tonight, an extraordinary scene in the Oval Office. President Trump ambushing the president of South Africa with false claims the nation is engaged in genocide against white farmers. President Cyril Ramaphosa said he came to the White House to discuss trade.
We are essentially here to reset the relationship between the United States and South Africa.
But Trump had other ideas.
A lot of people are very concerned with regard to South Africa, and that's really the purpose of the meeting.
The president insists white South African farmers are being persecuted and murdered on a mass scale. Unproven claims that have been amplified by Elon Musk, a native of South Africa. Though Trump's administration has banned all refugees, they are now making an exception for one group, white South Africans. A plane load arriving in the U.S. just last week.
We have had a tremendous number of people, especially since they've seen this. Generally, they're white farmers, and they're fleeing South Africa.
Reporters asking Trump what it will take to convince him there is no genocide. The South African president jumping in.
What will it take for you to be convinced that there's no white genocide in South Africa?
Well, I can answer that for President. It will take President Trump listening to the voices of South Africans, some of whom are his good friends.
But Trump, with the cameras rolling,
Turn the lights down.
Dimming the lights to present what he claims is evidence. Showing clips of extremists calling for violence, then leafing through articles he says prove it's happening.
Death, 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 horrible death, death. I don't know.
But you know that
Pick anyone. White South Africans are fleeing because of the violence and racist laws.
There is a crime problem in South Africa, but there is no evidence it is racially motivated or amounts to genocide. White people make up only 7% of the country, but own the vast majority of its farmland. Ramaphosa adamant that the video does not represent his government.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people.
South Africa's president then joking that he wishes he could be like Qatar and gift Trump a luxury jet.
I'm sorry I don't have a plane to give you.
I wish you did. I take it. I would take it.
And tonight, the spokesman for the South African president telling us of the confrontation, quote, "It was expected. We knew that whenever heads of state come to the White House, you get a bit of a show." And again, David, he insisted there is no genocide in South Africa. David.
Mary Bruce at the White House. Mary, thanks again.
Elon Musk's artificial intelligence company, X, now called XAI, opened a massive data center known as Colossus last year that supports the chatbot Grok. The facility is next to historically black neighborhoods and runs on 35 methane gas-powered turbine generators, which emit significant amounts of nitrogen oxide and other toxic chemicals. The Southern Environmental Law Center says the turbines are operating without a permit. Those permits are the focus of a Shelby County Health Department hearing taking place today, Friday, as Musk says he wants to continue to expand the project. In February, Elon Musk explained why he decided to build Colossus in Memphis.
Well, we needed a building. We can't build a building, so we must use an existing building. So we looked for factories that had been abandoned, but the factory was in good shape, like the company had gone bankrupt or something. So we found an Electrolux factory in Memphis. That's why it's in Memphis, home of Elvis, and also one of the oldest. I think it was the capital of ancient Egypt.
This is Tennessee State Representative Justin J. Pearson, a Democrat who represents Memphis.
AI, Elon Musk company, is operating 35 gas turbines in southwest Memphis, in the neighborhood where myself and my entire family lives. This is horrific news. They are increasing the amount of nitrogen dioxide, which causes smog and continues to harm people with asthma by potentially 30 to 60%.
For more, we are joined in Memphis, Tennessee, by State Representative Justin J. Pearson and his brother Keyshawn Pearson, Executive Director of Memphis Community Against Pollution. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Keyshawn, let's begin with you, as you're quoted all over about what's happening in your community, Memphis, Tennessee, where Dr. King was assassinated April 4th, 1968. Memphis, Tennessee, where Elon Musk wants to build, is trying to expand Colossus. Explain what's happening in the community response and what you're planning to say today at the Health Department hearing.
What's happening in Memphis is a human rights violation. Elon Musk and XAI are violating our human right to clean air and a clean, healthy environment. Today, I plan to address the Shelby County Health Department in stating that this has not been a transparent process. This has been done in a clandestine way. And this is not the way that we can move forward healthily for our community. We need justice in processing. We need justice in the process. We need redress and repair. We don't need continual pollution. We've seen this story before, where polluters come to our city, whether it has been TVA and their Valero plant, sterilization services and their ethylene oxide plant. We have continued to be looked at as the path of least resistance. Today, I will make and explain to our Shelby County Health Department that we are not the path of least resistance. We are a resilient community that deserves the human rights of clean air, clean water, clean soil, and a healthy environment. We should not continue to bear the burden of the negative health impacts of this facility and its rapid pace and movement. a phrase and a term coined by Leah Thomas, environmental intersectionalism.
Let me ask you, Pete.
How black,
I want to ask you, Elon Musk claims he chose the former Electrolux building in Memphis because he wanted to get his AI applications up as fast as possible within 122 days. He decided to use the abandoned building instead of a brand new one. Can you talk about what Electrolux was before the process it took for Musk's company xAI to purchase the building?
Electrolux was a company that scammed the city of Memphis. Electrolux came to our city and promised jobs, promised prosperity, similar to what xAI is doing, and then they left. They left without fulfilling the promise of jobs. They left without fulfilling the tax recommendations and the taxes that they said that they would provide that would elevate our community. They made promises and then they left and abandoned us. This is the same process that we've seen Elon Musk do in Texas as well as California. He will create a plan and then he will leave. And so what we're seeing right now is that this continual process is continuing to happen with a new tenant. Electrolux provided him the facility and he is scamming the city of Memphis while putting out pollution.
Keyshawn, I want to introduce your brother. This is an interesting inside-outside strategy. Tennessee Democratic State Representative Justin J. Pearson of Memphis, well known to people around the country. The two Justins, the representatives who were forced out of the legislature, then reelected back in by their communities. Justin J. Pearson representing Memphis. Justin, thank you so much for being with us, State Representative. If you can talk about your opposition to Elon Musk and xAI. Very interesting that your fellow Republicans who have a supermajority in the Tennessee State House recently passed a resolution recognizing Musk as, quote, a brilliant businessman who's saving lives and helping to restore America as a valuable ally of Donald J. Trump. Talk about your concerns about what this AI data center will mean.
Yeah, look, my concern is that Elon Musk is buying and paying for access to pollute, harm, and hurt our community. Unfortunately, our mayors and elected officials and appointed officials, Mayor Lee Harris, Mayor Paul Young, Shelby County Health Director Michelle Taylor, and the Greater Memphis Chamber all decided that the community of 38109, where I live, could be on the auction block for Elon Musk to buy. And it is a horrible, horrendous project that is having serious ramifications for our community. The reason that in legislation that my colleagues passed praising Elon Musk, I put several amendments, was to tell the truth, that Elon Musk is polluting the air of Tennesseans. He is continuing and perpetuating environmental racism and environmental degradation in our community. This project is an application for 15 gas turbines, but we know today that they have 35 turbines. And yesterday, a report showed 33 of those in operation, despite the fact that the mayor of Memphis said only 15 of them were being used because that's what xAI had told him. They are liars, they are abusing our community, and they're exploiting us, and it's having horrible ramifications. 17.2 tons of formaldehyde being sprayed into our air because of these gas turbines. Over 130 tons of nitrogen oxide, making them a larger polluter than the Memphis International Airport is happening right now in our community. And elected officials and appointed officials have a responsibility to the people who they were elected and appointed to serve, not to the billionaires and the oligarchs who are misusing and abusing their authority to hurt our community.
Good morning, Aptera fans. Steve here. I'd like you to come join us on our first Aptera road trip with myself and some of the crew that's off camera. We're starting off in Flagstaff, Arizona here today, this snowy morning. We're already charging at 300 watts just from the sun, and we're about to start driving on the old Route 66, go see some sights along the way and take you with us. So come join us.
We'll see you later. Based Tesla faces a new lawsuit over claims the automaker's vehicles don't accurately track mileage. A California man who purchased a used Model Y alleges the car's odometer incorrectly added extra miles. The owner claims his car recorded about 72 miles a day instead of the roughly 20 miles he actually drove.
This morning, major trading partners hitting back at President Trump's increased tariffs on aluminum and steel imports. Overnight, new Canadian tariffs on American products took effect, impacting everything from steel and aluminum to computers and sporting goods. The European Union also vowing to raise tariffs on American beef, bourbon, and motorcycles next month. President Trump not backing down.
I'm not happy with the European Union, I want to tell you, and
and
we're going to win that.
It comes after Trump imposed sweeping 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel imports on Wednesday. The European Union then retaliating with tariffs on up to $28 billion of U.S. goods.
Canada is not the one driving up the cost of your groceries or of your gasoline. Canada is not the one that is ultimately starting this war. President Trump's tariffs against you are causing that. And there are no winners in a trade war.
The back and forth causing chaos and uncertainty for consumers and many small business owners, including Jeff Quint, who owns a distillery in Iowa. This morning, major trading partners hitting back at President Trump's increased tariffs on aluminum and steel imports. Overnight, new Canadian tariffs on American products took effect, impacting everything from steel and aluminum to computers and sporting goods. The European Union also vowing to raise tariffs on American beef, bourbon, and motorcycles next month. President Trump not backing down.
I'm not happy with the European Union, I want to tell you, and we're going to win that.
It comes after Trump imposed sweeping 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel imports on Wednesday. The European Union then retaliating with tariffs on up to $28 billion of U.S. goods.
Canada is not the one driving up the cost of your groceries or of your gasoline. Canada is not the one that is ultimately starting this war. President Trump's tariffs against you are causing that. And there are no winners in a trade war.
The back and forth causing chaos and uncertainty for consumers and many small business owners, including Jeff Quint, who owns a distillery in Iowa.
The bourbon industry is going to be collateral damage in this tariff war. I don't really think there's any way around that.
And he's not alone. A new CNN SSRS poll shows 61% of Americans disapprove of the president's handling of tariffs, and 56% say they do not approve of how he's handled the economy overall.
But it's interesting to hear my colleague just now talk about disavowing white supremacists. When in 2022, she spoke at an event led by white supremacist and white nationalist Nick Fuentes, and when asked about it, doubled down on it and said, we're going to focus on people, not labels. So get out of here with that damn hypocrisy. And Dr. Snyder, I'm going to give you some time to respond. Go ahead.
First of all, I'd like to thank the representative from Georgia by making clear with her comments and with her person that any discussion of political warfare has to include Russia, Ukraine, and America. She's just demonstrated that point, I think, very powerfully. On the question of Nazis, I've written 2 books as a historian about Nazis and the Holocaust. On the question of Ukrainian nationalism, I am the leading scholar of that subject in North America and have been writing about it for 20 years. If the chamber is interested in the degree of far-right participation in Ukrainian politics, you can be assured that no far-right party has ever crossed 3% in Ukrainian election. So of course there are bad people in every country, but by any comparative standard is a very small phenomenon. In Russia, on the other hand, the army includes openly Nazi formations, such as Rushich. The government itself is fascist in character, and it is carrying out a war which includes deportation of children by the tens of thousands, the open intention of destroying a state, as well as mass torture. So if we're looking for fascism, and if there is anyone who is sincerely concerned about halting fascism or racism, you would wish to halt Russia.
Thank you so much, Dr. Snyder. And, you know, this hearing was put together to talk about political warfare, and it's strange because a lot of my Republican colleagues seem to be pointing a lot of fingers, but not at Vladimir Putin and not holding him accountable. I mean, even top-ranking Republicans are having enough of it. Michael McCall said, quote, "I think Russian propaganda has made its way into the United States. Unfortunately, it's infected a good chunk of my party's base," unquote. We just heard some of that right now. Republican Michael Turner, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, quote, "We see directly coming from Russia attempts to mass communications that there are anti-Ukraine and pro-Russia messages, some of which we even hear being uttered on the House floor." Dr. Snyder, can you just, talk really quickly about some of the main narratives Russia uses when engaging in political warfare?
I appreciate this question because if we're going to talk about political warfare, we have to take into account the ways that countries cooperate. It's entirely artificial to say, here's China, here's America. That means that we leave aside Xinjiang, at least we leave aside Tibet, Hong Kong, Taiwan, New Zealand, Australia, Europe, all the places where China practices political warfare, and we leave aside Russia and Ukraine, which is where it matters the most. Political warfare is only political warfare if it passes through us. That is the intention. We've just seen an example of it passing through a person. It's only political warfare if it passes through us. What the Russians and the Chinese imitating the Russians try to do is to convince us that our system is no better than theirs, there's no point in voting, and we should support, if we support anyone at all, the person who's most likely to bring our system down. That's the point.
I really appreciate you bringing up the fact that it has to pass through us, because we just heard it here from my colleague, and here's another tweet from the same colleague saying, "Anyone who votes to fund Ukraine is funding the most corrupt money scheme of any foreign war in our country's history." And if you look at where this is from the Strategic Culture Foundation, an online journal run by a Russian intelligence service that has been sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department for election interference.
Elon Musk's artificial intelligence company, X, now called XAI, opened a massive data center known as Colossus.
Musk's most painful betrayal came from the world. The world removes Tesla. What began as a dip in quarterly profits had now become something darker, a global erasure. Tesla, once synonymous with innovation, was being written out of the story, not just in markets or media, but in policy, infrastructure, and national strategy. In Europe, governments that once competed to lure Tesla factories were now pulling out their chargers. Public EV incentives that had once favored Tesla were now tied to European brands or open platform solutions. Germany and France led the charge, but others followed quickly. In some cities, Tesla-branded charging stations were dismantled and replaced with universal connectors. In others, Tesla's name was quietly removed from future development plans. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't angry. It was clinical. In Canada, infrastructure budgets were rewritten. Grants for EV expansion excluded any company under investigation for international supply chain instability, a thinly veiled reference to Tesla. Provinces like Ontario and Quebec redirected funds to smaller domestic startups and European partnerships. In Latin America, Tesla's solar ambitions were rolled back. Local contractors terminated agreements. Politicians cited reputational risk. In Asia, India's government declined Tesla's long-awaited manufacturing proposal, citing BYD's stronger delivery track record. Even in the United States, major municipal fleet contracts began to favor Ford, Rivian, or foreign-backed EV fleets. Tesla wasn't just out of favor, it was being deleted. What changed? Trust. Tesla no longer inspired confidence. Not in regulators, not in city planners, not in consumers. Where once Elon Musk was seen as a disruptor, he was now viewed as a liability. And in a world shifting rapidly toward electrification, no country could afford to bet its future on instability. Tesla has become the Nokia of electric vehicles, pioneering, revolutionary, and ultimately irrelevant. And that global humiliation sparked something even more dangerous, a worker-led revolt, the labor revolt that shook America. They built his dream. Now they're burning it down. In the factories of Fremont, California, and Austin, Texas, the mood shifted from frustration to fury. Tesla workers, once the proud soldiers of Elon Musk's industrial revolution, now saw themselves as the last ones holding a broken empire together. Over time, hours vanished. Stock options became worthless. Benefits were quietly trimmed. The message was loud and clear: sacrifice more, earn less. But the workers were done sacrificing. It started with informal walkouts, quiet protests during lunch breaks or unscheduled absences. Then came the picket lines. Then came the strikes. From Ohio to Nevada, Tesla's workforce erupted in organized resistance. Labor unions, long pushed to the margins by Musk's aggressive anti-union tactics, finally had an opening, and they seized it with everything they had. Rallies formed outside dealerships. Chants of "We built this, he broke it" echoed across industrial zones. Workers who had once praised Musk for his boldness now called him a billionaire parasite who gambled their futures on political ego and lost. And it wasn't just Tesla employees joining the cause. Auto workers from Ford, GM, and Rivian showed solidarity. What began as a company crisis was becoming a class war. The media caught on quickly. Viral videos showed once loyal Tesla mechanics burning their uniforms. Former engineers spoke to news outlets, exposing years of ignored complaints and financial manipulation. In congressional hearings, labor leaders testified that Musk had weaponized nationalism to crush American labor. Inside Tesla's executive suite, panic grew. Production halts spread. Deliveries missed targets. Wall Street, already skittish, saw red. But there was no messaging campaign strong enough to stop it. The workforce had turned, and they weren't asking for a seat at the table. They were flipping it over. But the damage didn't stop at Tesla. It triggered a financial catastrophe. How Tesla's collapse shattered the U.S. economy. It began with one stock, one company, one name, Tesla. And within weeks, it turned into something far more terrifying, a systemic implosion that sent shockwaves through every corner of the American economy. For most Americans, Tesla wasn't just another automaker. It was a symbol of national pride, the crown jewel of Silicon Valley, the proof that American innovation could still lead the future. But when Tesla collapsed, it took more than just electric vehicles with it. It took trust, capital, and stability. The immediate damage was brutally clear. When Tesla lost more than $135 billion in market value, it didn't just hurt Elon Musk. It crushed retirement accounts, mutual funds, and institutional investors that had tied their futures to the company's rise. Tesla stock had become a staple in countless portfolios, from government pension funds to 401 plans across the country. When that value evaporated, so did the savings of millions. By the end of March in the year 2025, financial advisors across the United States were fielding panicked calls from retirees and working families alike. Their wealth was gone, and the bleeding had only just begun. The broader indices followed like dominoes. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dipped sharply. The S&P 500 suffered its worst quarterly performance in more than a decade. Tesla's implosion triggered a cascade of sell-offs across the tech sector. Companies that once relied on Tesla's momentum to justify lofty valuations suddenly found themselves exposed. Investors began to question everything. Was this the first domino or just the most visible one? Banks started tightening credit lines. Lending dried up. Startups that had once counted on Tesla's ecosystem, battery suppliers, software integrators, charging infrastructure companies were now scrambling to stay afloat. Creditors demanded collateral. Underwriters reevaluated risk. And the real estate market, already straining under high interest rates and inflation, felt a second punch as consumer confidence collapsed. In cities like Austin, Fremont, and Reno, where Tesla had driven massive job growth, housing prices began to fall. Layoffs at Tesla quickly rippled outward. gutting local economies dependent on factory wages, contractor spending, and supplier activity. It didn't take long for the labor market to feel it. Job openings vanished. Manufacturing hubs slowed production. Unemployment claims rose in factory-rich counties, states that had lured Tesla with massive subsidies. California, Texas, and Nevada suddenly found themselves holding the bill for a broken promise. Lawmakers who once praised Musk as a job creator now faced angry constituents demanding answers. In many ways, Tesla had become too big to fail, but fail it did. This wasn't just a crash, it was a reckoning. A single company's collapse revealed how deeply the American economy had been built around speculation, image, and the cult of technological celebrity. Musk's most painful betrayal came from the ways Tesla had become too big to fail, but fail it did. This wasn't just a crash, it was a reckoning. A single company's collapse revealed how deeply the American economy had been built around speculation, image, and the cult of technological celebrity.